everyone, and welcome to another episode of Life Hacks for Working Moms, the podcast that helps you overcome the overwhelm, embrace the chaos, and cultivate a life you love. My name is Megan Strand, and I am so glad to be here with you today. Have you ever heard about something another family has done or is doing, and your mouth literally drops to the floor as you think, how did they ever do that? Well, I think you're going to have a similar reaction when I introduce you to my guest today. In September of 2013, Kathrin Spaccarelli and her husband sold most of their belongings, including their home, and traveled the world for a year with their two sons who were ages 6 and 10 at the time. They visited 25 countries on 5 continents, and I don't know about you, but I am dying to hear more about this adventure. Welcome, Kathrin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been excited all day to talk to you, so I can't wait to just jump right in. So tell me the story of how you and your husband decided to travel the world with your kids.
Well, we've always really loved being together as a family and traveling together as a family. Both of the boys had passports by the time they were 4 to 6 weeks old, somewhere in there. Gosh. And their first little passport looked like total mugshots because we had to hold their neck up from behind because they were so little yet, you know. But so we just have really loved that family time together, and it's just kind of been a dream. You know, every time we went on vacation, we came home thinking, boy, that 10 days was way too short, you know. So it kind of just kept evolving into how can we make this longer another time.
So it sounds like you definitely have travel in your blood, which is awesome. But was there a particular moment that you can think back to that you thought, you know what, we could actually do this?
I think it was more of an evolution of, you know, how can we make this longer? Before we had kids, we were able to get away for, I think, 4 weeks one summer to Italy, just the two of us. And so we kind of knew extended, longer travel was possible. And we knew the benefit for our children of having done it. Both of us, my husband and I both studied abroad during high school or college, and just knew the benefit of getting kids out there young. And it just became kind of a passion that evolved over time. So I don't think it was a one light bulb moment, but, you know, it certainly has always been there.
You know, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that experiential piece, because this is, I think, why I'm so excited to talk to you, because there are definitely different types of travelers. There are, you know, kind of the touristy things. And if you read your fantastic blog, which I'll put a link to in the show notes, you know, you kind of get that sense of like, okay, we're playing tourists now versus we're travelers. Can you talk a little bit about your own personal philosophy about that and how that relates to your kids?
Well, we tried really hard to do something what we call slow travel, and it's certainly not as slow as some slow travelers out there, but we kind of had a minimum of 5 or 6, 7 nights in each place. So that allowed us to really soak up the culture a little bit more than, you know, the people who are 2 nights here, 2 nights there. So that was certainly one part of it. But I think it's just having those experiences where you're, you know, playing with kids on the street that you don't speak each other's language, and you realize that you can do just fine, you know, getting along and sharing a shovel with somebody or whatever it is, you know, on the beach, and, you know, just having those moments. And I think as far as the experience went, certainly we had those moments where we were playing tourist, but then we also had moments where we were just living in a farmhouse in Italy for the last 5 weeks and studying Italian at a language school, and, you know, that kind of thing too. So we kind of did a little of both. As far as being a tourist, we tried really hard. Our philosophy was to really learn a lot. So our version of touristing was the Mozart Museum while we were in Venice, or, you know, the Great Barrier Reef when we were in Australia. I mean, really things that would help us learn and, you know, learn the culture as well as just grow from. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. Are there moments that you can think back over the past year that really kind of epitomize that experience that you really wanted to have for your kids that you could share with us?
Well, certainly, you know, I think the whole being able to live out of a backpack and having my 10-year-old look at me at one point and say, Mom, you know, we really don't need more than what's in our backpack, do we? And, you know, coming from, you know, the American culture where a lot of 10, 11-year-olds already have cell phones and that, you know, just, you know, it just kind of wows you. You know, they had a Ziploc gallon bag of Legos with them, and that lasted, you know, that was good. So it's amazing how much we don't need to. And I think that was a lesson for all of us as we sold our stuff. And and carried backpacks around.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much to even talk about right there. So when you were thinking about doing this trip, I want to step back just a second. And it sounds like it was always a dream and you were trying to just progressively do longer and longer trips. But what was in your mind, over a year ago, back to, it was probably 2012 that you started planning, right? Like, what was the biggest challenge in your mind to accomplishing this?
Well, we are small business owners, and so kind of wrapping up that piece was kind of challenging, trying to figure out how we can leave that for a year as we headed off. We just started budgeting too to save our pennies. We really saved and, didn't get a lot of things that our neighbors had, the neighbors, and things. So we just really saved our money, tried to look forward in everything, even the toys the kids got. We talked about a certain toy and what the price was, and we talked about how that's a half a day of travel. And, then let's save it for travel fund, Mom, So I think that was certainly part of it. And then we did a lot of travel hacking. So we were saving our airline miles, credit card miles. We got all of our long air flights paid for before we left with credit card and airline miles. So we were, kind of working aggressively at saving those. And so kind of a little of everything, really. It was a pretty big picture. So
it sounds like your kids were involved in this process from the very, very beginning.
They were.
How did you, maybe your younger kid might not have even, he was probably like, yeah, okay, whatever, travel the world. But with your older child, how did that conversation go with him?
I think we just talked about, we got them involved really, and this is kind of what we're thinking. And it kind of evolved over time as to when it would happen, or I think they didn't really believe it was going to happen until we actually had that air flight booked. But I think they were involved. We asked their opinions of where they would want to go. They each had different opinions on, places that were important to them. The 10-year-old really wanted to get to Greece, and we didn't make it there. So we're going to have to put that on the list for another time.
So.
But so I think we just really got them involved. The 10-year-old, I don't know if there's a picture on our blog of all the library, Lonely Planets he checked out from the library, and he had a bookshelf of, 12 Lonely Planets at one point, and he was researching Vietnam for us and had it all mapped out before we even left where we were going to go. And so I think it was just an evolution of all of us getting involved in it together and talking about it. And I think they were both pretty aware. I think they got excited along with us. So
yeah, absolutely. And it looks like from your blog that your older son did a lot of blogging himself. Was that sort of part of because I know you homeschooled them, right, along the way?
We did, yes. Yes, and he had to write a weekly blog, and we actually hired that part out to a writing coach back home, and so every Friday he had to upload a paper, and we put that up on the blog. And he ended up being way more prolific on the blog than I did because I was researching the next town and what we were going to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's really fun because I think that'll be a fun journal for him to look back on those stories.
Absolutely. Gosh, that's a college essay right there, right?
Right.
So how did you plan where you were going to go? Like, how did you plan your itinerary? Because it seems like when I think about that seems like a full-time job in and of itself.
No kidding. Turns out the world is a pretty darn big place.
Yeah.
And you think a year sounds like forever, but when you really start breaking it down, it goes pretty darn quick, We knew we were going to get to Japan because my husband and I had lived in Japan years before kids, and we had friends and that we just needed to visit, who all had their kids their own now, that played with our kids, which was really super fun. And then we spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, probably 6-7 months in Southeast Asia, because it's a very affordable place to travel. And then we went down, had some friends in Australia, and then kind of just slowly made our way around to South Africa and then up through Europe. One of the dreams my mom always had is taking the kids on safari in South Africa.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was kind of the softening blow when we told them that we were going to be taking the grandkids out of the country for a year, is to say, hey, you want to meet us in South Africa for that safari? So that was really special. We had 2 weeks with them in South Africa, which was lovely. And then, we had to do Europe and Italy and, that kind of thing too. So yeah, we kind of just slowly made our way slowly made our way around. It was, it was hard to plan, but some of it was budget focused and some of it was just, everybody's list of where they wanted to go.
And how much of it did you have planned out before you left home?
Not much. We had Japan pretty planned. That was our first stop. And then we had several of our long, the airline trips scheduled already because those were airline mile trips that we had to plan ahead. So like from from Australia into South Africa, where we were meeting up with my folks, and that safari we had planned, that was about 7-8 months into it.
Okay.
And then from South Africa, we took a repositioning cruise, which is, are you familiar with the term?
No.
There are the cruise lines. They tend to spend the warm season in one hemisphere, and then go down to the other summer in the southern hemisphere. And during those interim times, they have pretty much empty boat going from the southern hemisphere up to the northern hemisphere to start that next season. So we were able to get a pretty good deal on a cruise, 19-day cruise from South Africa up into Europe. So that was our transportation up to Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, that was super fun. And we stopped in little ports along the west coast of Africa and, Spain and Portugal that we probably wouldn't have made it to otherwise.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Wow, yeah. That's fabulous to know about.
Yeah, that was fun. And so then we hit Europe and just kind of went around visiting friends and some highlights and got to see the Eiffel Tower and Big Ben and, those too. So that was, we didn't have much planned out as far as, just the major things and a few of the flights, and we kind of just winged it the rest of the time.
I want to go back to something you said about telling your parents and the grandparents that you were taking the kids. Talk a little bit about people's responses when you said, yeah, we're going to go leave for a year. And by the way, we're taking the kids. What did people say outside of your family? Well, including your family.
Well, our family, I think, they're travelers too. And I think, at least part of them understood, although they were a little bit sad. And then certainly, from the community, you have those people that are like, wow, that sounds amazing. And then there are the people that are like, why on earth would you want to do that?
Yeah.
And so I think you just have, different people's reactions and, I think a little of everything really.
Oh, that's so fabulous. Well, it's just, I'm thinking about taking my kids to Peru for like 2 weeks this summer. And even just that, with in-laws is like, why are you doing that? Can we go with you? I'm like, no.
That's a different trip altogether.
Totally. So talk about what was the most surprising thing to you? It could be anything, like logistically or just your family or really anything. Like when you look back on the year, what really was surprising to you?
I think we all grew closer for sure. I mean, there are times when you needed to rely on somebody and you kind of just looked around to each other. And it's amazing how, we certainly met other families and met other people on the road. But, when push came to shove, it was really about the four of us coming together and helping each other with the bags or the packing or planning together. And, when the kids and the boys, I mean, they played together all the time, which was really fun to see as siblings. So, as they're hit and miss some days. But, so that was fun. I think also just the way all of us kind of left it with this broader understanding of the world. And we knew that shouldn't have been a surprise, but I think it always has that kind of surprising aspect to it when out of nowhere, the kids say, oh yeah, well, kids in Cambodia don't have that. Or, those moments where you see a kid playing soccer with a plastic Coke bottle and the kids ask you about that. And well, they don't have anything else, so I think there's always takeaways, but I think also as we all learn them together, that was really fun for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you had to do it all over again, what advice would you give yourself when you're back in the planning phases?
That it was all going to be okay. I think all of us went into it with really open minds and hearts as to what to expect. And, we didn't really have too much preconceived, but there's always that, are we doing something just totally crazy here?
Yes. And it's so awesome.
Yeah. And it was great. There really aren't too many big surprises or advice I would give myself. There were a few things where, I probably wouldn't stay in that hotel in Bangkok again. something. But
how did you research the places that you were going to be staying? Like I lean pretty heavily on TripAdvisor, but I know you can't always do that. Like that, if you're in some little teeny tiny town.
Yeah, I'm a huge TripAdvisor fan, and I would often find places on agoda.com or bookings.com or something. And then after I read the reviews on those sites, I'd check over on TripAdvisor to see if they have those same places reviewed. And TripAdvisor is really great for activities to do that are great, and certainly some hotels. That said, in the more expensive countries like Japan and through Europe, we ended up in Airbnbs a lot, apartment rentals, because then we could, cook a meal or two at home. And, just for 4 people, it was a lot easier to spread out, have some room, and much cheaper in the long run. So we kind of did a little of both. Airbnb, I really like their reviews too, because they seem very honest. You have to have actually stayed in the place to review it. So,
oh, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, it's. I would imagine that, as you said, you didn't have as much time to blog as you thought, because you were spending all this time kind of researching the next leg of your trip. So I would imagine that between traveling itself, doing these little adventures, homeschooling, and then researching the next leg of your trip, I mean, again, that sounds like a full-time job.
It was, but it was so worth it. It was so much fun. It's like the best job you could have.
The best job ever.
Right?
So what was it like coming back? When did you come back?
Just September. So 6-7 months ago.
Okay.
And we have rented a home right now in Seattle and through sabbaticalhomes.com. It's a great website for other people who are trying to travel. So they're short-term rentals or kind of longer short-term rentals.
That's cool.
And we've rented a home from a family who took their kids to New Zealand for the year. So we got a kind of a furnished home in Seattle, which has worked out beautifully for us, and we're really happy here. So that's kind of fun, and not quite sure what's going to happen when this rental ends up in July, although we have some friends we want to visit in Portland and California, so we'll do that and probably be back up here in the fall again. So
yeah. So what was it like for kids coming back to? Are they in school now, or do you homeschool them still? Or what's
the older one is continued to be homeschooled. He was really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
The second one is way super social, and he was really anxious to get back to
school and friends.
And so he joined the school, and he didn't really say too much. I think it's been fairly seamless. At one point early in the year, we said, "So does your teacher know what you did last year?" And he said, "Yeah, I told her, but I don't think she believed." Because, out of the mouth of a 7-year-old, I traveled around the world.
Yeah, children in Cambodia don't have soccer balls. Yeah.
So, but I think it's been, all of us are still kind of always in the back of our head planning the next thing. And, I read travel blogs and wish I could be out there again. And so that's probably imminent at some point that we're back on the road. But right now we are enjoying being closer to friends and family again too.
Sure. So when you were traveling, were there things that you just missed desperately about being home in your house or what have you?
Peanut butter. Not really. Our families, of course, and we were really fortunate that both the grandparents met up with us at different times on the trip.
That's so cool.
That was really fun. But no, we had each other, and we had all these great, amazing experiences and new things to try and do. And, there wasn't a lot we missed from home.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice that you didn't have to deal with I wish I could go back. I mean, some part of it, like when I think about my own family, I mean, it's hard enough to get them to go, I don't know, away for the weekend somewhere that they've never heard of, so, that I want to be with my friends, or I miss my school or any of that. So it's nice to know that your kids sounds like they were born
I think they were
travelers.
Too busy. They were just too busy to even think about it. I remember at one point in Japan, they were like, wow, we're only a month in, and here it goes. Let's just keep going. And we did some crazy wild things that, one of my biggest challenges was we did some zip lining in the Thai jungle. And the kids still talk about that as being one of their favorite days. And, these are just things that they wouldn't have been able to do back home. So I don't think they were yearning for regular school.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I wouldn't be either.
Right.
Well, when you think about your personal favorite trip or excursion that you took, what comes to mind?
Oh, the thing that a lot of travelers really have a hard time with this question because every day was such an incredible experience. But, a few things that come to mind. We volunteered with elephants for a week in northern Thailand, and we had to bathe and feed and clean their stalls and whatever it is. And it was not only incredible to be there, stroking the gentle giants and cleaning with them and living with them, but also just to see my little city kids working up such a sweat. We worked really hard and it was really lovely. But, also then you can't beat having been in the Great Barrier Reef or, different caves or, certainly even our little Italian countryside home was delightful. Everything was kind of its own special memory. So it is hard to pin it down.
How are you capturing those memories for your family? Outside of it being in your hearts forever, are you, do you have like a scrapbook that you guys put together, or is there something that you're going to be doing to kind of remember it?
Megan, we really should, but we're so anti-stuff.
I know, right?
The idea of like printing pictures, it's like, we're going to be leaving this house soon. Do we really want to frame things for the walls? So, we do look, I was asked to speak at a travel bookstore just recently here in Seattle and went in and did a speech on family travel, and we all just had fun reminiscing and picking out the pictures, and the family came with me, and then halfway through somebody in the audience said, "Oh, can we talk to your kids about what they thought it was like?" And so all of us just kind of remembering it together.
Yeah.
Just a week or two ago, my 7-year-old had to do a poster of himself, and his teacher kind of encouraged him to do something about the trip, and so he and I sat and looked at 3 million and 2 photos and tried to pick out, which ones he would want to present to the class on his poster about himself. And he had so much fun. Most of his were animals.
Yeah.
But he just had so much fun picking out the memories that were special to him. And that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that is absolutely the trip of a lifetime. I would imagine that as they get to different ages, they'll start remembering different things about the trip.
Remembering them differently.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's so fantastic. Well, you mentioned, giving advice for families. Do you have advice that you offer to families who would like to do something similar?
Well, I think part of the battle, or a big part of the battle, is just knowing it's possible. Yeah. I think a lot of people oh yeah, that sounds like a dream come true. But I think to actually see us having done it, and we didn't win the lottery, we saved our money and we sold our house and we kind of made it happen. And I think seeing people like us, and we met a tremendous number of fantastic families doing similar things with their kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that part was just fun. And just start saving those pennies, creating those airline miles, do whatever travel hacking you can find. And, it's possible. It's a fun little baby steps, but it's out there and it's possible.
That's fantastic. Well, Kathrin, this has been so interesting and inspiring. I've been just so inspired by your family and your travels and your adventure. So thank you for sharing that. If people want to find out more about you or your writing, or how might they do that?
Well, our blog is takingthebigbreak.com. And if we're also on Facebook, I'm probably a little more prolific on Facebook at Taking the Big Break. Or my email is contact@takingthebigbreak.com. And I'm happy to answer questions and talk travel. And, I love to inspire people to get out there on the road with their kids because I just think it's so hugely beneficial for everyone.
That's fantastic. Well, I will put all of that information in the show notes, which you can find at Life Hacks for Working Moms, the website, LH4WM.com. And as always, you can find Life Hacks for Working Moms on iTunes. I do recommend you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review if you liked this episode. We want to hear from you. So thanks so much for tuning in today. And on behalf of Kathrin and myself, we'd like to thank you, and I will talk to you next time.